New trend alert, more and more UK doctors have 2 jobs, with their second job making more money than they get as a working doctor. And having been in the healthcare industry myself for over 7 years and being a qualified medical doctor and investor, I've been able to have chats with doctors who have created financial freedom whilst working full-time as a clinician. And if you're interested in finding out how they've been able to do this, then stay tuned for the rest of this video. The first one is farming. Imagine being a doctor and a farmer. Well, for the sake of this point, we're going to refer to this doctor as Dr. X. So Dr. X has a hen farm that generates over £100,000 a year. Dr. X explains that growing up, their father was a farmer, so they had experience in the agriculture industry. And when they were thinking about what to invest in, they knew that people would need food and always will need food. And due to their background in farming, they thought that investing in a hen farm and selling eggs to local people and to large food companies would be a great source of consistent revenue alongside working full-time as a doctor. Now, I know what you're thinking, how can you be on the wards and then be on the farm? Well, over the years, Dr. X has recruited a number of people to work alongside so that when Dr. X is at work, there are other people taking care of their hens and everything involved in having a hen farm. And I found this really interesting because when speaking to Dr. X, they didn't have a significant amount of money to start off with. They would save a proportion of their salary every single month, and when it got to a sizable amount, that's when they then purchased the acre of land and purchased the hens, and then they would reinvest the profits from every harvest into the business. And doing my own research into agriculture, I can see that there are loads of different factors that can affect how profitable you are. Second one is an aesthetic clinic. So you're probably thinking another aesthetic clinic, but this was before the market became saturated. So for the sake of this example, we're going to refer to this doctor as Dr. B. So Dr. B was interested in skin and surgery and wanted to find a way to do something that combined both of these things together, and stumbled into aesthetics. And at the time, Dr. B only had £4,000 in savings and took all of this money and invested it into themselves in order to get the knowledge, the certification, and everything that they needed in order to feel confident in carrying out aesthetic procedures. And because they didn't have any other money saved, they entered a profit sharing scheme with salons that already were established with clients. And they used that to A, build up their brand and to generate money because at that point they had no money. Now, fast forward a number of years later, Dr. B was able to build up this clinic to have 15,000 patients, then scaled the business by recruiting other people to work alongside themselves so that they could continue working as a doctor full-time. Now, this story is incredible because it goes to show that you don't need to have, £100,000 or £20,000 saved up. You just need a little bit, and then you can be creative in generating funds needed to get the rest of the money that you need. The third one is property. So property was actually a very common one, but the one that I want to do a mini case study on is by a doctor who we'll call Dr. C for the sake of this video. Now, Dr. C has a portfolio of 8 properties that ranged at the time that they were bought from 100,000 to 200,000. Now, I will caveat that this was a time where house prices were not as high as they are today, and there was a lot more flexibility with the banks when it came to mortgage terms and mortgages in general. I will say this, Dr. C did not grow up in wealth. In fact, they were the first to do a lot of things in their family, and they were very aware that when it comes to property, you do need money up front and it can be quite expensive. So they spent a significant time working overtime and bringing their monthly expenses as low as they could, which even meant for a season of their life having to go back to their family home to really bring down the costs. And with this strategy, they were able to build up the funds needed to purchase a property. And then once they had one and they rented it out to tenants, Dr. C repeated the cycle again and again and again throughout their career until they reach the point of having 8. And I think, again, this highlights that you do not need to be born into money to make money. You just need to be willing to put the work in, which can be hard. And in speaking to Dr. C about this, there were times that was very, very difficult, especially when you're working full-time as a doctor and you have limited time outside of work. But Dr. C knew that this stress would be temporary, which is something that needed to happen in order for them to grow their portfolio. And they did say that once they got to a certain number, it became a lot easier to get more. It was just the first initial ones that were quite difficult. And now Dr. C has been able to replace their monthly income entirely through property, but chooses to still work as a doctor because it's what they're passionate about. So the next one that we're going to talk about is cars. So Dr. F, well, we're going to call them Dr. F, invests in cars. So buys them, holds them for a significant number of time, and then sells them. And Dr. F's rationale is not just purchasing any car, but purchasing cars that are rare. So I'm talking 1 in 10 in the UK or 1 in 5 in the world, which means that they're very expensive, but also very, very difficult to get to. And Dr. F will keep them in the garage, will drive them very rarely, and then will sell them either through auctions or on sites like Auto Trader. Because they are rare, and the older that they get, the higher their value, and because the miles are kept down to a very low amount, Dr. F is able to make a significant amount of money by marking up the value of the vehicle. And they've been repeating this model multiple times and have nearly made close to 7 figures on doing this alone. Now, I will caveat this by saying that Dr. F does come from a wealthy background, and I'm not saying that this method isn't reproducible if you are a doctor. I'm saying that it does require a significant amount of capital to start off with, but if you can do it as a joint venture, or if you can find a way to shape the deal where you bring the skill sets and someone else brings the money, this could be another alternative for you. They do this alongside practicing as a doctor because it doesn't affect their day-to-day very much once the car has been acquired. And the last one is a restaurateur, which is someone who owns a restaurant. So imagine being a doctor and a restaurateur, like the CV is giving. Dr. D, for the sake of this analogy, loves food and wanted to invest in food because, again, it's something that people need, and it was something that they love to do in their spare time when they weren't working. So rather than shelling out a lot of money at the very beginning, they started catering on a small scale, American style food, and built their customer stream that way, and also got feedback from people on the dishes that they liked and the dishes that they didn't like. And when they had built up their customer list to a significant amount, they then explored the idea of opening a mini American style restaurant, and they did research into the different areas that were accessible to them that weren't also too far from work. Dr. D then did research into the local area, so the competition, the legalities, and it was great because they had already got feedback on what worked on the menu from their previous customers. And when it came to launch day, and ever since then, it's been a huge success. I won't share the name of the restaurant because I haven't got permission to. But again, it goes to show that you can be as creative with your career. And who knows, you might have even had some of their burgers. Now you're probably thinking, well, how is this doctor able to work full-time as a doctor whilst having a really successful restaurant? Well, the truth is, what Dr. D has done is recruit family for the day-to-day running of the restaurant whilst they focus on the finances and the overall management of the restaurant. And that has worked particularly well in this instance. This video hopefully has inspired you and shows that actually you can be a doctor and you can have a business that is successful, that may require you at the beginning, but doesn't have to require you all the way through. And with help and the right staff and the right support, you can do both. You don't have to pick one. So yeah, that brings me to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was insightful, and I hope it gave you a different perspective on what some doctors in the UK are doing to create a financial buffer as things change. And if you have any questions or any interesting thoughts, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.